So you have a prequel idea for me? Yes, sir, I do. The prequel idea I have is for the Fallout series. Oh, that's great, but how is that going to work with the numbering system we already have for these games? Oh, and the title is going to be Fallout 76. Oh, it sounds like we're leaving out a lot of games in the process. What happened to the other 72 or so Fallout games? Oh, and the meaning behind the title is because it takes place in Fallout 76 in 2102, about 25 years after the Great War. Oh, that works for me. What's the gameplay going to be like? Oh, it's going to be open world like usual, but this time with a twist. Oh, it sounds exciting. What's the twist going to be? Oh, the twist behind this game is going to be always online, all the time, like not even open for discussion, always online. But that kind of makes it a giant middle finger to all the introverts who play these games. Oh, they're just going to deal with it. That is so unfair on introverts to force them to play with other people if they don't want to. But if they really want to stick to the guns on this one, they can just avoid other people. Somehow I doubt that'll work. That's like trying to avoid a school bully even though you're confined to the same school. And so you said it's always going to be online? Okay, what made you go in that direction, and why would you not want to put it in offline mode? Well, I originally wanted to implement multiplayer into the Fallout 4 engine, but then I realized that would have to be a standalone project in and of itself. Oh, that's pretty smart. The last thing we want to do is release a broken down dysfunctional disaster of a video game that looks like it wasn't even tested, resulting in a pretty horrible launch day. Exactly right, sir. Fallout 76 is going to have a perfect launch day. There's going to be literally no complaints about it. And what's the story going to be? The game is going to be at the earliest point in the Fallout timeline. It's going to take place 25 years after the Great War happened, and you play as a resident of Fallout 76. Oh, so the game is going to take place inside the vault for its entirety? Nope, West Virginia, the former inhabitants of the vault, their task is to recolonize the surface, and they're given their task from the vault's overseer, and she's already left the vault. But if the overseer has left the vault, then how did the player get the orders? Oh, well, she plays a recording of herself giving the order. Okay, I like the idea, and it doesn't take away too much, but don't rely on it all the time because it takes away from storytelling. Oh, really? Because I've had a lot of people record notes and holotapes for the people to find throughout the game. Okay, but all that sounds like a lot of work. Why would you go through the trouble of recording all those holotapes and not just make cutscenes instead? Because animation is hard, and using holotapes is an easy and quick substitute for storytelling. No, alright, I think it'll maybe be an okay substitute for storytelling. Who knows? Anyways, after the player is let out of the vault into the world, they start tracking down the overseer through all the holotapes she's left behind as she has traveled through Appalachia to her former home to see how the war has changed the place. Alright, so are we only going to have holotapes and notes for the player to find? Yeah, but not until the DLC comes out. Because this game is going to have more holotapes and notes for the player to find than all the other Fallout games put together. So we really need to get the player's money's worth out of all these games. Oh, my apologies, continue on with the story. Well, eventually the player gets a message from the Overseer, because she was actually given a secret mission from Vault-Tec themselves. And Vault-Tec, they're kind of like the hero of the series if you're in Vault-Tec, but they're also the enemies if you're one of the customers and you were experimenting on living inside one of their vaults. Well, they sound a lot like the Umbrella of this series. They pretend to be one thing and they screw over a bunch of innocent people. And yes, I know about the Enclave and all the meddlings, but still, my point stands. Exactly, so her mission is to secretly activate a missile silo, and there are 3 sites within the game: Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. But why though? Didn't nuclear missiles cause all this in the first place? But they sure did. So after the part of the Overseer, the player is then sent to go contact a group known as the Responders. Oh, and who are they? Oh, they're a group of first responders who originally gave aid to the citizens of Appalachia during the Great War when it all went down. Oh, EMTs, I like that. So what happens when the player finds them? Oh, well, it turns out that they're evac when they're attacked by the Scorched. By the who? Oh, a great band, but why are you bringing them up? Not the who. I should have mentioned them by name. The Scorched. So who are they? They are a group of ghouls who got infected by the breath of the Scorch Beast, who, get this, a species of bat that were irradiated and created by an Enclave experiment done in, I would say, 2083. Why would anyone in the Enclave keep them alive? Because why not? Alrighty then, I can kind of see your point with that, because we need these things to exist so the game can exist. Well, the player then meets the Free States, a group of survivalists who are trying to build a radar system that can detect the Scorch Beast and their nest, and with the player's help, they're able to eventually get this thing online. So they have radar that can detect life forms. That's exactly right, but before they can use it, they have to boost the strength of the signal. In order to do that, the player has to befriend a nanny robot. A nanny robot that seems anticlimactic. Right, so after befriending this nanny robot, the player eventually stumbles across the research done on the Scorch Beast by the Brotherhood of Steel. And what do they find there? Well, they find a terminal where they have to hack it in order to access the government network, which, of course, gains the attention of the Enclave. And so what happens to the player? Well, then they meet Modus, which is a centralized artificial intelligence system that lives in a secured fallout bunker. Oh, that sounds pretty interesting. So what happens then? Well, Modus has the player connect the Enclave to a series of connected computers scattered throughout Appalachia, so they can connect to an orbital platform which is never mentioned again in games that take place later in the timeline. But why would the player help out the Enclave? The Enclave wipes out anyone who opposes them. They're completely self-serving. They're clearly the bad guy in all this. Well, the player has to, because the Enclave offered to get their radar back online so they can detect and defeat the Scorch Beast and the Scorched. Well, so it kind of sounds like the Enclave has the player by the balls at this point. And what happens when the player makes it through that nest you mentioned earlier? Well, the player is then sent into one of the 3 missile silos mentioned earlier, where they then launch a nuclear missile directly at the nest. And then the game's over already? Nope, the explosion then wakes up the Queen for the final climatic boss fight. And how did the Queen survive that nuclear explosion? Oh, it's okay, because the Queen is completely immune to the radiation. But how did the Queen survive a nuclear explosion? Because I can tell you right now, she didn't. Oh, well, she survived the explosion because she can. Alrighty then. So it sounds like we have a pretty decent game as it sits right now. Let's just make sure that there aren't any tech problems that render this game unplayable come launch day. Oh, I completely kind of covered. The game's going to work perfectly fine on launch day, especially our servers. I mean, I would bet my car on it, but I already lost it betting on Shaq Fu being one of the greatest games ever made. Hey, I didn't instigate that bet. That was all you. Hey, I had a hitchhike to get here. So let's just move on from that game and get on this one. Alrighty then. Well, sorry about your car. So do you have any ideas for some DLC for this game? Well, I got just a perfect idea in case that the players notice the abundance of holotapes and notes. We can put out a DLC with new NPCs that have actual recorded and spoken dialogue trees. Well, it sounds pretty great. And it's already an improvement over the main game. And what's the title going to be? Wastelanders. Right, that sounds a little generic and repetitive. Is there a better title that isn't the name of something that's been a part of the series since pretty much day one? Okay, well, I can change the title if I come up with something better. Yeah, please do. If this game does have a shaky launch, we can just keep releasing updates until we complete the game. Well, releasing clunky, buggy games that clearly aren't finished or tested for that matter, that's become the norm nowadays, so I think we'll be able to save Fallout 76 should it have a horrible launch day. Oh, I'm not worried at all. I think we're safe from a shaky launch day. I mean, I do feel kind of bad about taking your car, so I left your keys right on my table. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thanks again.